How many of you have heard of Adelanto, first of all, the city of Adelanto? We have two folks here. Two, three. Has anyone else here heard of Victorville before? Has anyone driven to Las Vegas before? Taken the 15 freeway? Yeah, okay. So in the middle of the desert, once you go up over the mountains, you it's a high desert. So the first city, well, one of the bigger cities there is Victorville. West of Victorville is this small city. It's called Adelanto. It's a very small city. Their fiscal budget is about $10 million a year for the city. That's, yeah, I mean, it's very, very little. But because of that, these private detention centers, they know when and where to go, right? They know there's a city up there in the middle of nowhere where their budget is like $10 million. We should go and throw some money at them so we can build a detention center. So they did that. Those $10 million, out of those $10 million, $1.4 million comes from this private detention center. It's called the Adelanto GEO facility. GEO is one of the largest for-profit detention corporations in the United States. This detention center has the capacity to hold 1,940 people at any given time, men and women. It has two different facilities, the east and the west. The west is the bigger facility. That one holds 1,300 people. The east is an older facility, holds 600 people. And the east is where most of the women are being held. If you look at this report later, I'll give you a quick, a recap of what they found. But the Office of Inspector General went into Adelanto unannounced, and they found, horrible, horrible conditions. They found a gentleman who was in a wheelchair, who had most likely not been able to, had been put in solitary confinement, so he was on his own, in a wheelchair, and they talked to him, and they figured that he had not been able to sleep or been moved out of his wheelchair in about, I think it was like 4 or 5 days. He had not been eating. They found that a lot of people that say they have medical conditions, when they put in, they call it like a report, right? That you have to say, I am sick and I need to see a doctor. It takes up to 2 weeks to see a nurse. The nurse will then assess you, and then they will say, okay, well, here's some Advil. They won't really, you won't really see a doctor until they determine that it is a case where you need to see a doctor. But if the nurses are already overwhelmed, and they are actually told, well, only send us the cases where we need to do something. But again, what does that even mean, right? What does that mean for someone that needs medication today, not in 14 days or in 20 days after they see a doctor? They found that in many of the jail cells, there was nooses hanging. So these some of these detainees had said, had threatened to, well, it's not threatened, had mentioned that they wanted, they were feeling suicidal thoughts, and instead of supporting them or helping them, they saw the nooses, they encouraged it. And they left the nooses up as well. Those are just two things that I can remember. There was so much more in that report that the more you read, the more you realize how messed up our system is, right? And this was the first time that the Office of Inspector General had gone into Adelanto, even though there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of complaints. There have been 7 deaths since this detention center opened. 3 happened in 3 months in 2017. So right after the inauguration of this president, 3 deaths occurred inside of this detention center. Suicide attempts are some of the highest in the country for detention centers here in Adelanto. And on top of that, they want to go from 1,900 beds to 2,600 beds. And so we have from the beginning, before this detention center even opened, before my time there, folks were already advocating so that it would never open. And what we're advocating for is that it should be shut down. Right? No one should be detained, and no one should profit from detaining people. Right? That's number one. No one should be making a profit from detaining folks, especially in the conditions that they're detaining some of these. The conditions that they're detaining our folks there right now.